Work? Thank you. Again, sorry to be a few minutes late. We have a lot of moving parts here. I want to say good afternoon to everybody. Again, our thanks to Rutgers Newark for allowing us to use their space for today's briefing. So to Nancy Cantor and her whole team, a big shout out and a big thanks. Tomorrow, Mahan, we will be in Trenton at 2 p.m. at the War Memorial. And so we'll be trying to give you at least one day's advance notice as to where you will find us. As is now routine, I am joined by the woman who needs no introduction, the Commissioner of the Department of Health, the woman to my right, Judy Persichilli. The guy to my left, another guy who increasingly needs no introduction, the Superintendent of the State Police, Colonel Pat Callahan. And we are also joined again, and I welcome him back, to Pat's left by the Department of Health's Communicable Disease Service Medical Director, Dr. Edward Lifshitz. So, Doc, good to have you back with us. Before we get to the latest testing results, I've got a few announcements and updates on what we've been up to. Before I do that, I want to give Sheila Oliver a shout out, who's running the DCA as fast and furiously as ever before. The Lieutenant Governor and I made a decision some number of days ago that we would divide and conquer. I was just on the phone with her with a group of us a short while ago, and they are doing great work, so to give them a huge shout out. So if for no one else but for John Mooney, at a minimum, where are you, John? After careful discussion and consideration with the Department of Education and the Attorney General's office, we have applied for the available federal waiver to cancel all student standardized testing scheduled for April. We fully expect this waiver to be granted, and Counsel's office is already at work on a subsequent executive order to address the impacts of this decision on other areas of state law, and that will be forthcoming. With students at home and not in their regular classrooms, it is simply not feasible for us to be able to move forward with testing in any meaningful way. This decision will not impact the graduation requirements of any student. I want to repeat this. This decision will not impact the graduation requirements of any student. The number one priority must be for our students to work on the lessons before them and to use the time as best as possible to keep up with their current studies. Many parents have moved into a dual role of classroom educator, and it would not be fair for them to also now have to pick up the title of test proctor as well. I've got no other, John, before you ask it, I've got no other update in terms of how much longer school will be out, but it is still until further notice. We've not made any more definitive assessment as to at least until when. Secondly, as was announced last night by State Treasurer Liz Moyo, and she and her team, as usual, are doing a great job, more than $900 million in discretionary budget spending for the current fiscal year has been placed into reserve. We did not make this decision lightly, but right now, given the impact this emergency is having on our economy, it is the right decision to protect our state's fiscal stability. I will go through a series of other offline meetings and engagements that we have had since we last were together with you, but among others on that list, I'll just move that up to right now. I had a good meeting with the Senate President and Speaker yesterday afternoon. We kept our distance, but we met yesterday afternoon for about an hour in our offices, and we began a process of discussing how we see the budget process unfolding. I've got no news for you right now. It so depends on how our federal colleagues turn out today, hopefully today. That's going to tell us a lot in terms of the road forward. And speaking of which, I do remain hopeful from the ongoing conversations that I've been having with our congressional delegation. Most recently, just got off a call with Senator Bob Menendez. Cory Booker just reached out a moment ago with our delegation, with Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and his team, Speaker Pelosi, and the White House directly, that a direct cash infusion from Washington to states will soon happen. I'm knocking on wood as I say that. I fully intend to keep burning up the phone lines to Washington to see this through. More on that in a couple of minutes. I cannot stress this enough, that New Jersey and our residents need the assistance not just to see us through the current emergency, but to ensure that the vital state programs that will help us emerge on the other end of this will not be compromised. And I know the same goes for my fellow governors and their residents. Before I go on, I want to acknowledge to my right the Director of the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. Jared Maples is with us. Jared, great to have you. Thirdly, following on a very productive conversation with President Trump from yesterday, and again in a minute I'll go through some other conversations we've been having, we will soon receive a second shipment of sorely needed personal protective equipment, or PPE, from the national stockpile for our frontline medical personnel. Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, or Pat, an additional 200,000 plus N95 masks and more than 84,000 respirators, among other gear. As I welcome this development, and believe me, I welcome it, and for it I am extremely grateful. We are still in need of more equipment for our hospitals and responders. I'm extraordinarily grateful to the many private sector partners and general players in our state, including some of New Jersey's legacy companies who have emerged over the past several days with generous PPE, equipment donations, and other sorely needed meaningful steps. I mean, this redefines the phrase, if it takes a village. As good as we might be up here, as good as our legislators may be in Trenton or in Washington, even if we bat 1,000, we need help, and we're getting it. We're not there yet by any means. I'll give you a recent example, a today example. We've been informed by PSE&G that it will be making a donation of 50,000 N95 masks. I thank President and CEO Ralph Izzo and his whole team and the entire PSE&G family for pitching in to help our New Jersey family. Just to name some other interactions, I was touched an hour or so ago by Tim Cook and Lisa Jackson of Apple. As we all know, New Jersey's own Lisa Jackson, they've offered to send us some gear. Glaxo, Walgreens have stepped up. We mentioned Prudential yesterday or the day before, Pat. I think that donation has not only come our way, but the to donate at this time, they should email to the New Jersey State Police at ppedonations@njsp.org. That's ppedonations@njsp.org. I think, Pat, you told me you've already received over 350 emails. Again, a great example of the spirit in which this state lives every single day, and certainly at a time of crisis. Next step. The Departments of Environmental Protection and Community Affairs, along with the Board of Public Utilities, sent a letter to all municipal water utilities calling on them to voluntarily suspend all water shutoffs during this emergency. Our private utility providers have already voluntarily suspended shutoffs, and we need all water providers to follow suit. I hope I don't need to say this, but I will say it. I want to be perfectly clear to these utilities. If you do not voluntarily suspend shutoffs, I will order you to suspend shutoffs. No New Jerseyan should fear for losing their access to water throughout this emergency. Water utilities have until tomorrow to confirm with the DEP that they are taking this step. God willing, they all will, and for that we are thankful and appreciative, and if they don't, we will make them. Next, yesterday I announced the launch of our new jobs portal within our covid19.nj.gov site. So this is again within the one central repository of information, covid19.nj.gov. It's a site where residents who have lost, within that site rather, for residents who have lost their jobs due to this emergency can find and apply for a new job at one of our essential workplaces. And I am proud to say that we are the first state in the United States to do this. The response has been nothing less than overwhelming. In the first 24 hours, the page was visited by more than 88,000 job seekers. And as we continue to be contacted by more and more essential employers, the number of available jobs is increasing. Since yesterday, the number of open jobs, I think I said yesterday there were about 8,000. That's gone up to more than 12,000 from more than 100 employers across a variety of essential areas. Again, I urge every resident willing to step up to be part of our frontline workforce to visit covid19.nj.gov, covid19.nj.gov, and apply for a job. I also encourage essential employers looking for workers to connect with us through the site to have your openings posted there. Certainly, our unemployment insurance system is an important safety net for the many thousands of families being impacted by this public health emergency. But this is an opportunity for frontline work and to be part of seeing us emerge from this stronger than ever, which we unequivocally will, and for our state's economy to rebound faster. Again, to find a job or to post a job, it's a one-stop, covid19.nj.gov. Before we get into test results and sadly lives lost, I want to just briefly, as I mentioned a minute ago, and I apologize, Judy, to go on for another minute here, just to touch upon a number of other developments, engagements, conversations, follow-ups that we've had since we last gathered. First of all, on the enforcement front, just to prove that there are both knuckleheads out there on the one hand, and on the other hand, we see them and we're enforcing behavior. Charges are being brought against a defendant who got into a dispute with an employee of Wegmans, coughed on the woman, and told her after doing so that he had coronavirus. He then refused to cooperate with the police, to either give them his name or his driver's license for more than 40 minutes. A summons is being issued for terroristic threats, harassment, and obstruction. This is not an EO violation per se, but it demonstrates active law enforcement in the steps that we are taking. I want to give Manalapan Police Department a shout out and the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office a shout out. And as Pat knows better than anybody, as Jared knows better than anybody, we are up and down this state and we will not take any non-compliant behavior, never mind egregious behavior like this. So thank you. And again, a shout out not just to our healthcare workers who are heroes, but also our first responders who are enforcing this unique environment in which we're living. In addition, I mentioned I had spoken to President Trump yesterday morning, and that was a very productive call. We then had shortly after our press gathering, we had a VTC, a video conference call with the Vice President. We then last evening had a productive conference call with the administrator of FEMA, Pete Gaynor, as well as FEMA Region 2 head Tom Von Essen. And those conversations, as was the one with the President, continued to go very well. We mentioned yesterday that the President gave his support personally. FEMA reiterated their active support for our four field hospitals. Pat, tell us where you expect those locations to be, please.
We have, they're en route now. We were going to get into this tomorrow, but since the Gov asked and he's my boss, we're going to have one is going to be at Meadowlands Exposition. The second one's going to be at the Convention Center in Edison. The third one will be set up at Atlantic City's Convention Center. And the fourth one will be housed periodically at our urban search and rescue facility, with that location to be determined at a later time once we are able to analyze the best and most effective place to set that up, Gov.
Pat, you're kind and gracious to me. I went out of order, but tomorrow we will, just to preview tomorrow's gathering, we will, you'll be speaking as well as we would expect Colonel Park, who's based in Philadelphia, who's one of the senior members of the Army Corps of Engineers, who's camping in at the Rock right now. So thank you for that. So field hospitals were on all of these conversations. PPE I've already referred to. Obviously, our support of the direct cash assistance for states was on the list of all of these conversations, or at least with the president and vice president. And then we also raised that we had applied, I believe as of yesterday, for a major disaster declaration under the Stafford Act, and that is under consideration. I want to give a shout out to our delegation who have stood tall in support of that. Just today alone, Senator Menendez, Congressman Gottheimer, and I exchanging both live conversations and notes on that respect, as well as our outstanding 502F designation under Title 32 as it relates to federal support for the National Guard activities. Those are both pending. We raised on all of the calls that I mentioned. Again, thirdly, I mentioned already a very good, productive, early stage discussion with the Senate President and Speaker. And again, I want to give a big shout out to the leadership from both sides of the aisle. Minority Leader Bramnick and I had an exchange today. I just sent Minority Leader Tom Kean a note on something, and again, a very productive meeting yesterday late afternoon with Messrs. Sweeney and Coughlin. I want to give the legislative colleagues as a group a big shout out of thanks, and we're trying to find our way through this together. In real time in Washington right now, having just gotten off the phone with Senator Menendez and just exchanged notes with Senator Booker, the markets are up today, I suspect because there is the potential for real progress in Washington. And it's too early to say where this turns out and where it ends and where it lands. But as we sit here now, there are big elements in what is being negotiated consistent with what we have believed all along have been elements of what we believe needs to be a federal assistance program, a big direct stabilization fund, among other elements as we understand it that are currently on the table, a big direct state stabilization fund, big support for mass transit, unemployment insurance, big support, community development block grants, big chunk for hospital help, both generally and specific to COVID-19, a big help toward small businesses. So fingers crossed, if those elements in particular in large scale remain parts of what is ultimately agreed upon, voted on, and signed by the president, that's good news. In the midst of an incredibly challenging world right now, that would be really good news. And I want to give our entire delegation a shout out. Bill Pascrell was on with me yesterday on this. I want to give each and every one of them a shout out, but a particular shout out to Senator Bob Menendez, who has been a particular bulldog. It's not final yet. I don't think Sue Fulton at the Motor Vehicles Commission has the word officially. I know President Trump mentioned this last night, but I want to give ourselves a modest pat in the back because I think we were one of the first states, if not the first state in America, to suggest and ask that the Real ID timeframe be pushed back. And it looks like it may be headed that way. If that's the case, that would be a good result. It's not that we don't think we need it, we do, but to do this in an orderly fashion, given what we're dealing with, I think we'd all agree makes sense. It's not part of government, so I want to make sure everyone knows and hears me saying that. It's a 501c3, but I want to give a shout out to the First Lady and everybody, both the Board of Directors as well as the New Jersey icons who have stepped up and launched the New Jersey Pandemic Relief Fund. It was kicked off this morning with the likes of John Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, Jon Stewart, Charlie Puth, Danny DeVito, Stephen Colbert, Whoopi Goldberg and others. That's pretty good company. New Jersey, pound for pound, I'll put our talent and iconic figures up against any other American state. Again, it's not part of government, so I can't promote it, but I will acknowledge it just as I've acknowledged so many of the other private sector players and unions. No other state can pull that group together, as I just mentioned, on a moment's notice. The board of directors, again, with the likes of Ray Chambers and Nina Wells and others who have consistently been there for the state of New Jersey across both sides of the aisle, putting America and New Jersey first. There's no other state in America that can come close. So bless them and bless everybody in the broader village who are helping us out at this time of great need. Now to test results. This is a sobering report generally from me, and Judy will give you the details. We are reporting today an additional 846 residents testing positive, bringing the statewide total to 3,675. Again, 846 new, Judy, I believe that's right, to a total of 3,675. I believe that means New Jersey is the #2 state in the nation, but I would also remind everybody that we have been aggressive and particularly of late in our testing regime, but that is a fact. We have also learned with a heavy, heavy heart of an additional 17 COVID-19 related deaths. God rest each of their souls. We join their families in mourning these extraordinary lives. This is by far our largest single-day report of new deaths, so it was with a particularly heavy heart that we report this today. We have now lost 44 fellow New Jerseyans. And if anyone is looking to me for a reason to justify the steps that I and we have ordered, I can now give you 44 of those reasons. Again, as we have been saying for the past many days, we have been fully expecting the number of positive cases to increase dramatically as our specimen collection capabilities increase, and in particular as the private sector lab companies have increased their scale and ability to process these tests. These numbers are vital. While they are sobering on the one hand, these positive test case results, they are also vital data that we need to make the best decisions to flatten the curve and stay out ahead as best we can of this outbreak. Our FEMA-partnered testing sites remain open daily, and more county sites are opening up. So again, the FEMA-partnered test sites are the two, one at Bergen Community College, which opened on Friday, the second at PNC Bank Arts Center, which opened yesterday. I would like to note that Passaic County will be opening a testing site tomorrow for county residents, so this is similar to what Union County has done, at William Patterson University in Wayne. This site is open only to Passaic County residents, and you must have a doctor's referral for testing. So if you believe you may require a test, please call your healthcare practitioner. And again, please only seek a test if you have symptoms. We just do not have the capacity or capability to test the so-called worried well. We understand why folks might be worried. The anxiety, we've talked about it almost every time we've been together. We get that. We understand it. But if you don't have symptoms, please allow the folks who do have symptoms to get into these testing opportunities first. As this new site in Passaic and other new sites come online and more specimens are tested and then processed, again, we fully expect that the numbers of positive tests, total tests in fact, will go up dramatically into the many, many thousands as we've been predicting. Judy has a little bit of a window today on the non-positive tests, and I will let her go through that. But that's something that folks have been rightfully asking for. Okay, I get the positives, but what's the universe look like? And we have an imperfect, I think it's fair to say, but imperfect first window into at least what that may look like. Let me also say this. We can't flip a light switch here. If we could, we would, and we would have done it a long time ago. It takes time for us to see the impacts of social distancing. So while we cannot wait to see the numbers plateau and eventually decrease, we do not know when that will be. and we will continue to take every step possible to ensure social distancing. We're having a meeting after this session later today, our first real deep discussion about modeling and where this is headed. I urge everybody again to not be alarmed by the numbers of positive tests. The more we have the facts, the more we can make fully informed decisions as opposed to just educated guesses. And again, yes, the number of positives is big. It's getting bigger. It will continue to do so over the coming days. But again, they are critical, knowing that data. And again, we've got our first window into the broader non-positive data. Getting our arms around that is going to be critical to winning this public health battle. Again, I urge everybody, and I know there's impatience. If I could ask you for several things. One, some patience. We get it. We understand your anxiety. We understand what it's like being cooped up at home, but we need you to continue to stay at home and do the basic stuff. Wash your hands with soap for 20 seconds. If you do go out of your home, practice both safe respiratory hygiene and social distancing. Frankly, if you're in your home, exercise social distancing. I cannot stress to you enough the need for social distancing. We know, by the way, just think about this. We know that it takes up to 2 weeks for people to show signs of the illness. So new cases today could still mean new cases 2 weeks from now, and so on and so on. Unless, and this is the important point, we all act today to slow its spread. We're doing everything we can. We have the chart today? We do. Again, I want to remind everybody, we're doing everything we can to lessen the amount of sick people and fatalities. Literally, we're spending 24 hours, 7 days a week on that. But even if we have the same number of people who get infected and we fail in our efforts to lower the number, and we will not fail, by the way, but even if we do, I remind everybody the volume under each of those curves is the same. But the red curve wreaks havoc. The blue curve allows the healthcare system to be able to digest the same amount of cases, but in a more manageable period of time. Again, from day one, we've had two choices, two stark choices, and we have clearly gone all in on choice number two. Choice number one is to let the virus run its course along that red curve with enormous amounts of infections and a meaningfully larger amount of fatalities and economic havoc. Or on the other hand, rip the economic Band-Aid off, take the pain up front, shut the place down to all non-essential, to leaving only essential activity up and running, and by doing so meaningfully lower the amount of fatalities and folks who are sick. As you can see from the numbers we're reporting today, we sadly cannot bring that fatality number to zero. We're already 44 precious lives lost in our state. We'll do everything we can to keep a hold of that, but that number sadly will go up. The positive test results, again, will go up. It is partly because of community spread and a big dose because we're testing a lot more folks. Again, the silver lining is the more we understand the data, the better we will be equipped to deal with that data and get out ahead of this. Before I turn it to Judy, and by the way, I think in terms of formal remarks, it's just Judy and me today. Pat and Dr. Lifshitz will weigh in as needed and as appropriate. I hope that's okay. But you won't be bashful if there's something you want to get off your chest, I know. Unrelated to this, we are hearing too many reports of some non-retail businesses which are violating, both in fact and in spirit, the order requiring 100% work from home with limited exceptions. Some businesses have gone so far as to deem all of their employees essential, to force them to report to work. Others are simply refusing flat out to follow the order. Let me be clear, if I could. My executive order is not a polite suggestion. It is an order. No one, and I mean no one, who can either do their job from home should be going to work in an office. We must have 100% compliance. This is about public health, and it's about people's lives, your employees' lives, their families' lives, and your life. Inquiries about failures to comply should be directed at the following phone number. Again, if you're working, we've gotten a few of these. I've gotten a couple directly to me where the firm is not complying with what we're asking them to do. So here's the number you call, 609-963-6817. 609-963-6817. Again, before I turn things over to Judy, I want to thank again to the overwhelming amount of New Jerseyans who are helping us by using common sense and by being a role model for others. We know it's not easy on you. It's not easy on your families. And frankly, I can assure you it's not easy on any of us or any of our families. This is truly and in every sense of the word an unprecedented time for our state, but we are unequivocally going to get through this, and we're going to get through this together as one New Jersey family, stronger than ever before. With that, please help me welcome the Commissioner of the Department of Health, Judy Persichilli.
Thank you, Governor. Good afternoon. Well, as the Governor stated, the number of cases of COVID-19 in our state continues to rise, and they continue to rise quickly. As of 8 a.m. this morning, New Jersey now has the second highest number of cases in the nation. With the ongoing spread of COVID-19, I am once again emphasizing that social distancing is vital to slow this process. We've seen in other countries, such as China and South Korea, that taking aggressive actions can flatten the curve and decrease the number of new cases. Strict enforcement of these initiatives have led to dramatic decreases in these countries. In South Korea, they viewed social distancing as the main effort of mass protection. Their residents stayed home because they recognized it was the right thing to do to protect their communities. Due to the relatively high transmissibility of the virus, the impact of social distancing on the peak of the epidemic and the potential delay of the peak is likely to depend on the early measures that the governor has put in place. According to the study by the European Center for Disease Control and Prevention, it's exactly what you must do. This reinforces our stance that these types of aggressive social distancing initiatives can have similar effects in New Jersey. We don't expect to prevent every single case, but we are trying to limit or to spread out the number of new cases. Similar to what has been seen across the U.S., we are seeing a significant amount of cases under the age of 65. About 35% of our cases are between the ages of 30 and 49. And approximately 24% of those individuals have been hospitalized. This is just a reminder to younger individuals that they are not immune from COVID-19. They also need to take steps to reduce their risk of exposure. As always, and as I've stated previously, we continue to remain concerned about our most vulnerable populations, and we're working regularly with our partners in nursing homes and other long-term care facilities to try to minimize the impact that this virus can have on our elderly. As of this morning, we have had at least one confirmed case in 19 of our long-term care facilities. This causes us concern. Many of the nursing homes with confirmed cases are in the same counties where we have large numbers of cases generally, such as Essex, Monmouth, Bergen, Middlesex, and Morris. We know that as cases continue to rise, our hospitals will be caring for patients with COVID-19. The department is modeling for this anticipated need in order to have the bed capacity required to give these patients the care they deserve. We expect to have more to say on this modeling later in this week. As the governor said, we are sad to report that we've had 17 new deaths, for a total of 44 deaths in our state. There were 5 new deaths in Bergen County alone, 3 in Morris County, and Union counties. 9 of our total deaths were associated with long-term care facilities. We continue to monitor the patients with positive results in all of our long-term care facilities. These are our most vulnerable population. Today, we are working with the leadership of the St. Joe's facility in Woodbridge to assist them in the movement of their residents to another facility. This may result, unfortunately, and ultimately in the closure of that facility, a facility that has cared for the most vulnerable population in Woodbridge and the surrounding area for decades. This is the result of some of their employees home, ill with influenza-like illnesses. And they have a number of residents who have tested positive for COVID-19. Unfortunately, we've been monitoring the organization since Friday evening, and we are working with the sisters that own and take care of the residents for an orderly transition. Today, we are also announcing 846 new cases for a total of cases over 3,600. The county breakdown of the new cases is as follows: Bergen, 61, Burlington, 7, Camden, 16, Cape May, 1, Cumberland, 1, Essex, 63, Gloucester, 6, Hudson, 38, Hunterdon, 7, Mercer, 8, Middlesex, 62, Monmouth, 53, Morris, 28, Ocean, 36, Passaic, 63, Somerset, 31, Sussex, 3, Union, 43, Warren, 3. And we are still gathering more details on these cases and 316 additional cases. We've been asked questions about a more detailed analysis of test results, particularly regarding the positivity rate of the tests, meaning the percentage of lab results that are positive compared to the total number of lab tests performed. According to the data that we've collected this morning of 7 laboratories that are sending us COVID-19 results, there were more than 12,000 tests performed on residents of New Jersey, of which approximately 3,600 have tested positive. The overall positivity rate is 27%. That's a really important rate. It tells us how many tests we've performed and how many have tested positive. That will help us in our predictive modeling of the type of care that these individuals require. It also means that the majority of the results have been negative. But we remind people who test negative and have symptoms that it's important for them to still stay at home while you are sick, because it might mean that you've been infected with another respiratory virus. So we're working around the clock, and our public health and emergency preparedness response teams are coordinated throughout government, as well as the healthcare sector and other public health partners, to respond to the needs of the residents of New Jersey. We will get through this, but we have to work together. Thank you.
Judy, thank you. May I ask you, or just come in behind you in a couple of questions? We've had positives in 19 long-term care facilities in the state. Just for the folks watching, I believe the denominator in terms of the number of long-term care facilities in the state is 375. Does that sound right? Okay, so that's about 5% of
Yes.
of the total. Secondly, is it fair to say, and Dr. Lifshitz, I'd love you to disagree with me here, getting the negatives for the first time, a window on the negatives, in addition to the pure math, by definition, thanks to the bully pulpit that we have all exercised and the rules of the road, the overwhelming amount of folks who have been tested are symptomatic, right? So that's what we've been preaching.
Yeah, because that's what we've been following. They're mostly symptomatic.
So I guess if there's a good news associated with that, a further piece of good news is the asymptomatic folks are not even a part of that. And then to repeat the health warning, which I want to make sure everybody who is symptomatic and tested negative, you're not Superman. You still have to make sure you're not being contagious regardless of what it is you have. Be smart. Is that fair to say? All right. And then one last comment I had before we throw it open, unless, Dr. Lifshitz, would you disagree with that, or you?
I would. Two people I should never disagree with are my wife and my boss and my boss's boss. So no, I wouldn't disagree with that. That's absolutely accurate. I mean, certainly we're discouraging people with health symptoms to be testing. We know that a lot of people out there have very mild symptoms and are concerned. We know that we're in allergy season amongst other things, and it can be difficult to tell whether you sneeze twice. People get nervous and go ahead and get tested as well. But yes, we're trying to reserve testing for people with symptoms.
And then the only other thing I wanted to say, counties. So total cases so far, Bergen continues to be the highest number. This is of the total of 3,675. Bergen has 701. Second is Essex, 342. By the way, they are the two most populous counties in New Jersey, so it's not shocking, although the Bergen number continues to be 2x the second place county, which is Essex. Monmouth is next at 288. Middlesex at 277, and Union now is the fifth highest at 246. The other county observation I wanted to make, you all heard the overnight numbers. This is the first overnight report that I can recall. I believe it is the first where the number of new cases was not led by Bergen. And so you've got Bergen at 61, but you had Essex at 63, Middlesex at 62, Passaic at 63. So that's both good and bad news, right? So there's probably some element of community spread and also some reality, as we've said already, that a lot more people are getting tested. I don't want to pound the same, so thank you, Judy, for everything, and most importantly for your tireless, exemplary leadership. I don't want to beat the same drum, and we're going to go left to right, so we're going to give me a second, but you're on deck, sir. Stage left to right, by the way, stage left to stage right, so we're going to come this way. My left, I apologize, as a former actor. We're at war. There's just no question about it, and I've said this before, but let's remember what the ingredients were to win World War II. It wasn't that we panicked. We were smart. We worked our tails off. We were proactive. We were aggressive. We had courage. Those are the elements that are going to likewise get us through this, and we will unequivocally get through this as one family, united and stronger than ever before. Dante Colucci is on the microphone, and we'll start over here, sir.
Yeah, James Dombrowski, Post Eagle.
I'm not hearing any amplification out of that, sorry.
I can get it. James Dombrowski, the Post Eagle. Colonel, have we seen a significant decrease in crime across the state? What's going on?
Question, a reduction in crime?
Yes.
We've actually, year to date, seen a 25% reduction in crime as compared to last year and an 18% decrease in shootings.
All right, my usual.
It stays that way. Brent.
All right, so
I didn't see you, Brian. I apologize. We'll come back to you.
List of questions. One, I know there was talk about hotels being used for quarantine. Do we know what that would look like or if that's going to happen? And then I have more questions.
Keep going.
Okay. Two, based on what the president said in recent days about the economy versus, reopening the economy, can he do anything to lift that? Meaning, if that's going on in the state, could he cause businesses to be reopened here with federal authority? Three, there's also been discussions about people dying before getting positive tests back about COVID-19. How is that being handled? Are you concerned about numbers being off a little bit because of that? And
do you have a slideshow?
Yeah, that was good.
Okay.
I'll get back. Go ahead.
I'm going to have Pat address hotels. Judy will test folks who are passing before they get their tests. I will just say the president's got the biggest bully pulpit in the world. And if the president of the United States says X, it has a huge impact. To the best of my knowledge, other than exercising the federal purse strings, that is not necessarily translated into direct action, but there's a moral suasion associated with the presidency of the United States that is unlike any other office in the world. I would think, and I spoke to him yesterday. He made this point to me that he's made in public now the past number of days. He doesn't want the cure to be worse than the disease. I don't think any of us do, but I do think there's a responsible way to go about that. And one of the huge levers available to get that done responsibly is the action that, God willing, Congress is taking today. That is as robust. If it stays in the neighborhood that I was read into by Senators Menendez and Booker coming in here, if it stays in that neighborhood,
Maybe if it comes up. So I'll just wait for my 10 minutes at 8. That's what I'm waiting for. Right, maybe Eric's handling it.
Why would Eric do it? It's a double-acre show.
Well, that's a good question, Kara.
They need some talking to. Some talking to.
Not by me. So you go, girl. You talk to him.